A luxury trap is an idea, an innovation, an invention that when at first introduced into society is a luxury, but then it becomes a necessity, something that you can't live without. For example, the modern smartphone. People can't go for 1 minute without their phones. Yet 20 years ago, they did not even exist. But it revolutionized the world, and now everybody has one. Everybody has to have one. Well, in my opinion, mass incarceration in the United States has become a luxury trap for this system and for this government. The United States of America has a dual justice system, and it is based on race. One system is for people of color or minorities, and the other one is for whites. And if you're rich and white, well then you get the royal treatment. And I'll give you one guess as to why that is. The fact of the matter is that in these United States, brown and black lives for that matter, do not matter in this justice system. No minority should wish to be white if ever up against the law in this country. The United States of America became a major superpower because of free labor at the expense of Africans and their descendants. Almost immediately after the 13th Amendment supposedly freed the slaves, this country and this government began finding ways to force those freed slaves back into labor. Jim Crow, which was legalized oppression, became the norm for the next 100 years for those of African descent. This division that was justified by the background and color of somebody's skin to the detriment of Black Americans really stemmed and originated from the hatred that was brought on by slavery, which manifested itself into legalized oppression. You cannot take generations and generations, centuries of hatred and end it just because of one piece of paper. That foundation of hatred is going to manifest itself in other ways, and that's where we got Jim Crow. 100 years later, after this legalized oppression, this government, this system was forced to pass legislation into saying and admitting that a Black American or a person of color had just as many equal rights as somebody who was white. In the same way that Jim Crow was established and manifested from the hatred of slavery for the next 100 years into legalized oppression of blacks, well, once the civil rights movement came and a new way of life, a way that showed the government and said to them that Black Americans are just as human and equal as white Americans, that hatred had to be manifested. That reluctance had to go somewhere. It just did not go away.
Congress passes the most sweeping civil rights bill ever to be written into the law, and thus reaffirms the conception of equality for all men that began with Lincoln and the Civil War 100 years ago. The Negro won his freedom then. He wins his dignity now. Before an audience of legislators and civil rights leaders who had labored long and hard for passage of the bill, President Johnson calls for all Americans to back what he calls a turning point in history.
Once again, a piece of paper cannot get rid of 100 years of legalized oppression. Something has to happen. Something has to give. And for this government, that meant mass incarceration. 50 years after the civil rights movement, we are seeing the manifestation of hatred that originated all the way back to the foundation of this country. And that is the control and oppression of people of color, particularly Black Americans. Please be advised, the next few minutes show gun violence. On the bottom of your screen, you will see what happens to Philando Castillo, a black man with a legal gun permit, after he informs the police officer who pulled him over that he has a firearm in the car. On the top of the screen, you will see how Kyle Rittenhouse, a white man, after killing 2 people in public, walks down the street with machine gun strapped to his neck, looking every bit as an active shooter, and cannot even get the police officers to acknowledge him. Look at the difference as to how they are treated by the police simply because of the race.
I have to tell you, I do have a firearm on me.
Don't reach for it then.
Don't
pull it out.
I'm not pulling it out.
Don't pull it out.
You just killed my boy. He wasn't reaching.
Don't pull it out.
He wasn't.
Don't move.
Oh man, I can't.
It only took Officer Geronimo Yanez less than 10 seconds to kill Philando Castillo. Philando was only being a responsible citizen and letting the officer know that he had a legal weapon on him. Meanwhile, in the same time span, Kyle Rittenhouse walks towards the police with his rifle while people yell that he had just shot somebody.
Hey, he just shot them! Hey, dude right here just shot them! Dude right here just shot all them down there! That dude just shot them right there! That dude right here! Yeah!
The police see a white man walking towards them with a weapon and do absolutely nothing. They actually yell at him to get out of the way.
Someone injured straight ahead. Get out of the road!
After minutes of walking around with his weapon, Rittenhouse eventually is told, "You with the long gun, do not come down here, it is closed." Within 1 minute's time, a black innocent man is killed by the police, and a white man who killed 2 people is ignored by the police. George Floyd, as a black man in the US, knew very well what his fate could be on the day that he was confronted and killed by the police. Warning, the following is not easy to watch.
Yeah, on the ground. On the ground.
Mama! Mama!
Yeah,
Mama.
it's in the,
Mama!
one of the front pouches
Mama!
on my.
Mama, I love you. Reese, I love you.
You got hobble?
They're my kids, I love
They're
them.
grabbing it.
I'm dead.
Mine's in my side. It's listed. It's labeled.
Black American lives, particularly those of black men, are being used to justify a system that is based on control with the guise and facade of corrections. Do we need prisons in this country? Absolutely. Are there bad people? Absolutely. And they definitely need to be incarcerated. This does not mean that we should not have any prisons. Not at all. But the fact is that the US disproportionately locks up people of color, particularly black men. All across the United States, government employees at the local, state, and federal levels depend on this system. They depend on mass incarceration to pay their bills, to live, to eat. From prison workers, to prison contractors, to defense attorneys, to prosecutors, to judges, and to politicians. All of them depend on this system continuing the way that it is. If a prison is being closed because it is old, or there's lack of funds, or is now obsolete for whatever reason or another, the number one reason that people will argue, the community will argue to keep it open, the politicians will argue to keep it open, it's not going to be because of crime. It is going to be for one reason only, and that is jobs.
2 state-run prisons, including one in Mercer County, are on the chopping block, and 5 more could be coming. Hearings are going on today to talk about whether to close those facilities and what it would do to the surrounding areas. Testimony today is focusing on prison populations and economic impact.
Word this facility could be closing quickly caused concern over the potential loss of more than 400 jobs locally.
Good evening. I'm Charlotte McBride. Scott is off tonight. We begin tonight in Luzerne County, where the state is again in talks to close a state prison.
Well, Charlotte, according to Senator John Udicek, he feels the state should not unfairly burden Luzerne County with its task about its budget. SCI Retreat near Nanticoke is the area's largest employer with more than 400 people working there.
SCI Retreat sits along busy Route 11 between Nanticoke and Shikshini and is seen as the area's largest employer with more than 400 people working here at the state prison in Luzerne County.
I live in Shikshini, so we have no businesses in Shikshini, and if they close the state prison, that's another business done. So what about our school taxes? There goes another thing. It would hurt our business quite a bit. My brother-in-law works at the prison, so I mean, they have their homes here, and if they have to transfer elsewhere, that's not good.
Those local residents are not the problem. The prison system is. However, I did not hear one argument about crime. Let's hear what we have heard though. We've heard that this place is the largest employer. It'll screw up our local economy. There is nothing else around here. And my brother-in-law, my family works there. Prisons actually become family businesses in these towns. This is the Pennsylvania State Corrections Officers Association, and they're rallying to keep a local prison open. Let's check out what their sign says. This guy has a sign that says "Save our jobs." Perfectly understandable. I wouldn't want to lose my damn job either. My man here says "Save our families." Alright, a little dramatic, but I get it. What about the last one? Save our communities. Where are the signs that say that crime is out of control and we are the ones that keep you safe? They don't exist because that's not the point of mass incarceration. People have come to depend on this prison system for survival, and that is a luxury trap. The Bureau of Prisons is the largest hotel chain in the world, and they need to fill those beds. And in my next video, I'm going to show you exactly how the justice system does that.